$30 billion. That is the number Anthropic is about to lock in, and Bloomberg says it could happen as soon as next week. Let that sink in for a second. $30 billion in a single funding round, making this one of the largest private capital raises in the entire history of the technology industry. Not just AI history, all of tech history. And the reason investors are lining up to write those checks is not just hype, it is the numbers behind the curtain. Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei stood on stage at a major conference earlier this month and dropped a jaw-dropping figure: 80 times growth in annualized revenue and usage in just the first quarter of 2026 alone. 80 times. That is not a typo. That is a company that was already valued in the tens of billions growing at a rate that makes even the most seasoned venture capitalists nervous. Nervous they are going to miss the boat. But here is where it gets genuinely complicated. Because at the exact same moment Anthropic is preparing to close this historic round, a separate and deeply unsettling report is making the rounds in security circles. Their next flagship model, Claude Mythos, has been put through its paces in a pre-release vulnerability audit, and researchers found over 10,000 critical bugs across 50 different organizations in a single month of testing. 10,000, not minor glitches, not UX hiccups, critical security flaws. The kind that, in a deployed enterprise system, could mean data exfiltration, system compromise, or worse. So we have a company simultaneously raising the largest AI funding round ever seen, while sitting on a mountain of unresolved vulnerabilities in their most anticipated product. That tension, between breakneck growth and the terrifying complexity of what these systems are actually doing, is the defining story of this entire AI moment. And Anthropic is right at the center of it. Most people this week were staring at Anthropic's funding headlines. Almost nobody noticed what DeepSeek quietly announced, and it could genuinely reshape the coding AI market in a way that very few people are prepared for. DeepSeek is building DeepSeek Code, their own fully featured agentic coding tool, designed from the ground up to go head-to-head with Claude Code and OpenAI's Codex. Now on the surface, the world does not exactly need another coding assistant. But here is the part that should make every developer sit up straight. DeepSeek's V4 model pricing is reportedly up to 100 times cheaper than comparable outputs from its Western rivals. 100 times. That is not a competitive advantage, that is a category redefinition. If DeepSeek Code ships with even 70% of the capability of Claude Code at 1% of the cost, the economics of AI-assisted software development flip overnight. Enterprise procurement teams that have been quietly wincing at their Anthropic or OpenAI bills suddenly have a credible alternative they can actually justify to a CFO. And this matters beyond the pricing. DeepSeek has been on an absolute tier in terms of model quality. Their recent releases have consistently shocked Western researchers who expected a large performance gap that simply has not materialized. So when DeepSeek says they are building a coding agent, you do not dismiss it. You pay attention. Meanwhile, over at Google, there was a genuinely interesting quiet release that almost zero mainstream coverage touched. Google pushed a significant update to Generative, their open-source framework for building agentic AI applications. Specifically, they introduced a middleware architecture layer for Generative applications. Now, middleware sounds boring. It is not. What this actually means is that developers building AI agent pipelines on top of Generative can now insert custom logic, authentication layers, rate limiting, and observability tools cleanly between the components of their AI app without hacking around the core framework. For anyone building production-grade agentic systems, this is a genuinely big quality-of-life improvement. It brings Generative closer to the kind of mature, extensible framework that enterprise developers need before they will actually trust it with real workloads. Google has been playing the long game with Generative since its launch, and this update signals they are serious about making it the default infrastructure layer for AI app development, not just a demo toy. The fact that almost no major outlet covered this tells you everything about how fast the news cycle is moving right now. A meaningful open-source AI infrastructure update barely makes a ripple because there are $30 billion funding rounds and 10,000 bug security reports competing for the same headlines. Let us talk about the business layer this week, because there are at least 3 storylines converging that paint a very specific picture of where the AI industry actually is, as opposed to where the press releases say it is. Start with the money. Anthropic's $30 billion round is not just a funding story. It is a signal about the entire pecking order of the AI race. Because when institutional capital moves at this scale and this speed, it is not gambling. It is a calculated bet that Anthropic's position as the enterprise safety-focused alternative to OpenAI is going to be worth defending at almost any price. Dario Amodei's 80 times revenue growth claim is extraordinary, and if it holds up to scrutiny, it means Claude has genuinely crossed over from being the thoughtful challenger to being a market-moving force in its own right. But there is a credibility problem lurking underneath all that growth, and it connects directly to a broader issue surfacing across the industry this week. A sharp report making the rounds on financial media exposed how venture capitalists and founders have been systematically inflating ARR, that is annualized recurring revenue, to crown AI startups with valuations that do not always reflect real economic substance. The mechanics are clever. Companies count pilot programs as committed revenue, include non-recurring professional services fees in their ARR figures, or apply aggressive annualization to what are essentially one-time contracts. The result is a fundraising environment where the numbers sound extraordinary because, in many cases, they are being engineered to sound that way. This does not mean every AI startup is cooking the books. But it does mean that, when you hear a headline like 80 times growth, the appropriate response is to ask exactly what is being measured and how. Then there is the security angle, which hit hardest this week via a TechCrunch report with a headline that should be taped to the wall of every AI product team on Earth. Everyone is navigating AI security in real time, even Google. The piece makes a sobering argument. We are in a genuine transition period where the companies building the most powerful AI systems in history are simultaneously figuring out how to secure them. There is no established playbook. There are no fully proven frameworks. And the Anthropic Claude Mythos bug disclosure, 10,000 critical vulnerabilities found before public launch, is Exhibit A for exactly why that matters. Finally, the graduation speaker backlash story deserves a mention not because it is a business story, but because it is a leading cultural indicator. Across multiple American universities this commencement season, students have been openly booing speakers who deliver optimistic AI talking points. One viral incident captured the crowd chanting explicit responses to a speaker promoting AI optimism on stage. That level of public hostility from the generation that will actually live with these systems, the longest is not noise, it is data. And it tells you that the gap between how the AI industry talks about itself and how the broader public experiences that reality is wider than any funding round can paper over. This week's tool is Viktor, and if you are building anything in a professional context right now, you need to know about this. Viktor just raised $75 million to deploy what they are calling a virtual coworker inside enterprise software stacks. Not a chatbot, not a personal assistant, a coworker. The distinction matters enormously. Viktor is designed to operate with ongoing context about your organization, your documents, your workflows, your team's communication patterns, and then function as an active participant in getting work done rather than a reactive tool that answers questions when you remember to ask them. The concrete use case that made this click for me. Imagine you are a project manager at a mid-sized company. Viktor ingests your project management tool, your Slack channels, your shared docs, and your email threads. Then, before your Monday morning stand-up, Viktor has already drafted a status summary, flagged 3 tasks that are at risk of missing their deadlines based on team activity patterns, and prepared a prioritized question list for the meeting. It did this without you asking. That is the shift Viktor is chasing, from AI as a tool you use to AI as a colleague that operates alongside you. The $75 million raise was led by Excel, who literally flew to Warsaw, where the Viktor team is based, to close the deal. That tells you the conviction level here is extremely high. The product is available now in early access, freemium tier included, and it integrates with the standard enterprise stack: Slack, Notion, Google Workspace, and more. If you are running a team and you have not looked at what agentic workplace AI actually looks like in practice, Viktor is the clearest demonstration available right now. Go try it this week. The early access window is the best time to get in before the waitlist fills. And if you thought this was wild, You need to see what Google dropped last week with their Gemini model updates. The full breakdown video is on your screen right now.